It feels like the world is tearing itself apart over this question. What is a woman? We're told this is a new, unprecedented culture war, a moral panic cooked up for a society changing too fast. But what if it isn't new at all? What if the relentless, chaotic, and often cruel fight over trans rights has nothing to do with bathrooms, biology, or sports, and everything to do with power? This isn't a new script, it's an old one. It's a playbook the powerful have used for centuries to decide who gets included, who counts as real, and who gets erased. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on the playbook. We're going to show you how this dusty old script of exclusion is being used right now to manipulate all of us. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. To really get what's happening today, you have to look back. Weaponizing the definition of womanhood isn't a new tactic. It's been a reliable tool for keeping social hierarchies in place for a very, very long time. I made a couple of videos on this, which I will link above and in the description. But for now, take the feminist movements of the 1960s and the 70s. As the movement took off, a power struggle started brewing inside it. The loudest voices, often belonging to white, middle-class, straight women, started defining the entire feminist project through their own very specific lens. Their problems became the problems. Their vision of womanhood became the definition of womanhood. This acted like a bouncer at a club, deciding who was and wasn't on the list. Working class women, whose lives were shaped by economic exploitation, were often told their issues were about class, not gender. Black women, carrying the double burden of racism and sexism, were told to pick a struggle. This was like asking someone to climb a ladder with a heavy backpack of sexism while someone else has tied weights of racism to their ankles. You can't separate the two forces that are holding you down. The legal scholar Kimberlé Crenshaw would later give this a name: intersectionality. But at the time, the message from the movement's gatekeepers was clear. To be a real woman with real women's problems, you had to fit a very narrow model. The point wasn't just to define womanhood. It was to control the entire narrative of the movement. By boxing others out, a small, privileged group could make sure their priorities stayed at the top of the list. They got to decide who was in the club. This strategy, using the definition of woman to exclude people, didn't start in the 20th century, and it definitely didn't end there. It's a playbook that gets dusted off and reused whenever the status quo feels threatened. So why is the definition of woman such a powerful tool for control? Because controlling definitions is a form of power. It's the power to draw lines, to create an us and a them, and to lock in social and political hierarchies. When a dominant group gets to decide who counts as a woman, they're also deciding who doesn't. This gatekeeping is almost never about protecting the group. It's about protecting the power of a select few within the group. Think of it like a VIP section at a concert. The security isn't there to protect everyone in the venue. but to preserve the exclusivity and perks of the few people inside the velvet rope. Their defense of a rigid biological definition of womanhood isn't just a philosophical debate. It's a defense of a social order where their brand of femininity holds status and power. This gatekeeping also serves another critical purpose: distraction. It's a classic magic trick. While everyone is being told to look at the right hand, the manufactured panic over who's in which bathroom. The left hand is quietly manipulating the real structures of power. It's a perfect diversion. The people orchestrating these campaigns don't actually want to solve a problem. They want a conflict that keeps us divided. Think about it. Trans people face shocking rates of poverty, unemployment, and housing discrimination. Studies consistently show that trans adults are about twice as likely to be unemployed as their cisgender peers. And when they do find work, they face a staggering wage gap, with some data suggesting they earn 32% less. These are crises of economic justice, healthcare access, and basic human dignity. If society were genuinely worried about women's welfare, we'd be laser focused on this. But instead, the conversation is deliberately dragged towards scary, divisive hypotheticals. This isn't an accident, it's a strategy. It keeps all eyes on marginalized groups, while the system that make life unequal for everyone just keep humming along. And that brings us back to today. Look closely at the arguments being used to push the hundreds of anti-trans bills in legislatures right now. Sound familiar? It's like watching a Hollywood reboot of an old, bigoted movie. The plot is the same, just with new actors. The protect the children narrative, the moral panic over women's spaces, the framing of a marginalized group as a predatory threat. This is the old script, reenacted almost word for a new generation. The exact same fear tactics once used to push lesbians out of feminist spaces or to justify racial segregation are now being aimed squarely at transgender people. The characters have changed, but the plot is the same. A powerful alliance has formed between right-wing politicians and a loud minority of so-called gender-critical feminists. It's like two rival corporations that despise each other, but agree to team up to crush a smaller, new startup they both find threatening. The far right gets a progressive-sounding excuse for their discriminatory agenda, letting them claim they're defending women's rights, while they work to dismantle the reproductive freedoms and economic protections that help all women. And in return, the anti-trans feminists get a massive political machine to blast their message to the world. It's a marriage of convenience, built on a mutual desire to control and define. They whip up moral panics, deliberately conflating trans people with predators to create a climate of fear. We're told that trans rights are a threat to cisgender women, but the evidence points in the opposite direction. The political project driving anti-trans legislation is a threat to everyone's rights. The states with the most extreme anti-trans laws are very often the exact same states attacking reproductive rights, voting rights, and workers' rights. The economic cost is massive. One analysis of North Carolina's infamous bathroom bill estimated it would cost the state over $3.7 billion in lost business. But the human cost is immeasurable. Transgender people especially trans people of color, face huge economic penalties just for being themselves. This policy is like trying to kill a plant by systematically denying it water, soil, and sunlight. The goal isn't just to harm it, but to make its environment so hostile it can no longer survive. This isn't a side effect. It's the entire point. This isn't about protection. It's about control. It's easy for people outside the trans community to see this as a niche issue, a distant culture war that has nothing to do with them. But that is a profound and dangerous miscalculation. The fight to erase trans people is a test run. It's like a mining company testing a new destructive drilling technique on a remote mountain where few people live. Once they've perfected it there, with little resistance, they can then bring that same destructive technique to mountains everywhere. What's being tested is whether the state has the right to police our bodies and legislate our identities out of existence. If they can successfully do it to a small and marginalized community, who do you think is next? The same legal arguments and political machinery used to deny gender-affirming care can be and are being turned to restrict reproductive freedom for cisgender women. The same rhetoric used to demonize trans people is recycled from historical bigotry used against gay people, people of color, and immigrants. When you let one group's rights to self-determination get put up for a vote, you weaken the right for yourself. This isn't just about trans people. It's about bodily autonomy. It's about the freedom to exist without being persecuted. It's about whether we want to live in a society where our rights are secure or one where they can be yanked away by the political whims of the powerful. Seeing this historical pattern is the first step toward resisting the manipulation. The fight for trans rights isn't a sideshow to other social justice movements. It's at the very heart of them. If you want to keep learning about how these hidden systems of power shape our world, subscribe for more. Ultimately, the debate over trans rights isn't a debate at all. It's an exercise in power. It's a carefully staged play designed to distract, divide, and hold on to control. It uses a familiar, worn-out script of exclusion to turn us against each other, while the real structures of inequality go untouched. By refusing to play our part, by seeing the playbook for what it is, and by standing in solidarity, we can take back the narrative. We can affirm that the fight for one group's freedoms is tied to the freedom of everyone. The question was never, what is a woman? The real question is, who gets to decide?